it's a little bit unique because the market is being affected so heavily by immigration. Over 400,000 new Canadians last year, another 400,000 apparently coming in this year. The federal government throwing money at that again, just directly, like we're just going to build houses.
Make it rain.
Right. So what, again, how do you mesh a provincial strategy with this, what I would say, sort of a left-wing socialized approach to solving a government-created
right
problem to begin with? How do you marry those two things together?
And so the federal Liberals rely on the high numbers of immigration, not just because it's a good talking point for them, for their base, about how they're pro immigration. It's irresponsible, right? They're just increasing these numbers at skyrocketing levels, and Ontario bears the brunt of it because most immigrants come here,
and most of them go to Toronto,
right? Yeah, and there's no planning involved. Like we're not able to keep up with the immigration levels just by infrastructure planning. Like we just can't keep up. And so but the other reason why the federal Liberals are doing that is because it's their only way of growing the economy, is just to add more people. Because productivity in Ontario and has been wiped out in the last few years because of the high electricity rates, high taxation, the red tape. We got to slash the red tape, not just trim it, not just cut a little red tape. The bureaucracy and the regulations are out of control. And so the productivity's taken a beating in Ontario compared to other jurisdictions. And so the only way to increase and grow the economy is by adding more people. And that's not a sustainable economic solution. That gets you to your 1.5% economic growth temporarily because you're adding people, but then you're creating an unsustainable living environment where the infrastructure is not keeping up. And like you said, one of the elements of it is the housing market, is just becomes unaffordable. And so productivity is a key that I should have talked about earlier, and you're bringing it back up. Productivity so that people are able to take home and produce within an hour highly competitive levels, and also take home pay has got to increase, not decrease, as we're going on. And so productivity is one of the things that doesn't get talked about because it's kind of really like in the weeds, and it doesn't really make for a great campaign platform. It like acts the carbon tax that captivates people, but reducing the level of taxation and getting rid of slashing the red tape, but then also on the building. We've seen the Ford PCs. They'll bend the rules on the planning process. If you're Amazon in Cambridge and you hire the right lobbyist, all of a sudden you'll get a ministerial zoning order, and you could just cut through the planning process. And look, right of center, we're for development, right? But if there's a problem with the planning process and the development process, to get more houses up, to get more buildings up for business, to build roads, shouldn't we be looking at that wholesale rather than cutting corners for certain friends and certain industrial facilities, depending on which lobbyists they hire? There has to be a review of the planning process so that it's the same across Ontario. And are projects getting bogged down or not? And are we able to keep up the infrastructure with the level of immigration? And we need a strong voice that says, hey, 4,400,000 immigrants in a year, that's too many. Like maybe it's too many. And a strong provincial leader to say, hey, like that's unacceptable. We can't keep up the pace here in infrastructure building to keep up with it. Well, there's another example, right? Like rushing to Facebook. I'm sure Facebook, I haven't checked who's Facebook's lobbyist is. I'm sure it's someone friendly, but who knows? But the Ford PCs love the announcements, Facebook, Amazon, they'll do all that. Yeah. But the driving employer in Ontario is small and medium-sized businesses, not Facebook, not Amazon. Those are good for a headline. But how are we changing the circumstances for the small and medium-sized individual who's starting a business, who's running a business, to help them grow and help others come forward? And how are we changing and improving the infrastructure so that we're not getting bogged down? And then the other part of the whole thing that keeps getting missed is this drive that every job's going to be in Toronto. And there's in Cambridge and out in Peterborough on the east driving into Toronto. How about instead of making everything come out of Toronto, we decentralize a bit so that business can open in other areas. Employers and employees are across Ontario, make other strong pockets of economic activity across Ontario that are not reliant on government subsidization.